Hello everyone. Let me thank you for joining our event. Today we'll be talking about the media freedom and the newly enacted media law in Azerbaijan. And I'm joined by two well-known bloggers and journalists in Azerbaijan. We have here Mehman Hüseyinov, former political prisoner, former prisoner of conscience, corruption investigator in Azerbaijan. Mehman Hüseyinov is been conducting series of corruption investigations stories in Azerbaijan, and he will be joining me from Azerbaijan and also from Baku, Azerbaijan. We have another well-known blogger, video blogger, the Boomerang media journalist Elchin Rahimzadeh. So together we will try to tell you what to expect with the newly enacted media law, and also in the second part of the discussion would like to inform you about the latest developments around the arrest of Ali Aliyev, the leader of the Citizen and Development Party, who a prisoner of speech, we can say, because he's been imprisoned in what many believe is a clearly politically motivated arrest for his speech, for his interview, in fact, with me for Osmanqizi TV. I forgot to introduce myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Sevinç Osmanqizi. I'm also a journalist from Azerbaijan. I'm also a YouTuber, a video blogger, and I blog in my YouTube and Facebook page called Osmanqizi TV. So thank you for joining us. We will be first talking about the new media law. As you know, this law has been the president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, has last year in January there was a presidential decree establishing a new media development agency, and whose purpose was to prepare a new media law. But many journalists believe that ever since this president's decree, the work has stopped over the new media law, because there was no talk, no public discussion about this, that the new draft has been prepared. And in fact, to media inquiries about how these discussions are going on, whether there is any work about this media law, the official answer was, we did have some discussions, but nothing's been decided. So throughout the year of 2021, journalists, including myself, inquired several times whether indeed there is some kind of a draft law that the president of the office is working on, and the answer was no. But then all of a sudden, late 2021, the draft has been sent to the parliament by the president's office. So there were no prior public discussions, no media discussions, no journalists involved, no draft published in the parliament side about this draft. But then President Aliyev actually sends this draft law to the parliament to start discussions. So this is itself is a violation of law, because there should be prior public discussions, and the media itself should be contributing to these discussions. But none of this happened. And in December, this hastily prepared media law has been adopted to law, and in 3 readings. And the government tried to catch up, seeing all the criticism coming from journalists and from the public, that there was no input from the public, no input from journalist organizations, media experts. So hastily arranged meetings, so-called discussions, when it was already late. It was already in the parliament. It was already adopted in the first reading. So the second reading, third reading, and finally on December the 30th, when the world is on New Year holiday, Christmas celebrations. The offices are closed, journalists are taking final break. This media law comes into effect. It's adopted by the parliament. So December 30th is only one day before the New Year's Day. So ever since this law has been hastily adopted, the media in Azerbaijan, media experts, journalists were calling on the president's office not to adopt this law, because it goes against the freedom of speech. It further restricts the freedoms of media and freedom of journalists. But February the 7th, President Aliyev nevertheless approved it, signed it into law, and we're talking about the new restrictions, new package now in place. So I'm here to discuss with my journalist colleagues what new restrictions this new law is going to bring. What does it mean for us, for bloggers, for journalists in Azerbaijan and outside of the country? Because the media law stipulates that it is compulsory, it is mandatory that those media outlets that are functioning in Azerbaijan, they are run by Azerbaijani nationals, that they should be permanent residents of the country. So what does it mean for bloggers, for those who have already been forced to leave the country? What does it mean for exile media? I myself consider myself one of them. So why don't I give the floor to Mehman Hüseyinov. First, would like to hear from you, and what do you think this media law was for? What was the real purpose behind? What new restrictions do you foresee, and what it's gonna mean for you? So, floor is yours, Mehman Hüseyinov.
Təşəkkür edirəm Sənin xanım. İlk öncə bildirim ki, Azərbaycan dilində çıxış edəcəm və yəqin tərcümədə siz kömək eləyəsiniz.
Absolutely, I will help to translate. Absolutely, Mehman will be speaking Azeri. Go ahead, Mehman.
Deməli, Sevinç xanım, ilk öncə ondan başlamaq istəyirəm ki, bu qanunvericilik qəbul olunan təzə qanun mənə artıq yad deyil. Çünki bu qanun hələ 2022-ci ildə qüvvəyə minməyinə baxmayaraq, mən artıq 2019-cu ildə, daha doğrusu 2017-ci ildə bunun nəticəsini görmüşəm və mən Azərbaycanda ilk jurnalist idim ki, defamasiya ilə bağlı, 147-ci maddə ilə bağlı həbs olunan ilk jurnalist idim.
So Mehman says that even though this media law came into effect only this year, but I started to feel its effect even 2000. Neçənci ildə this?
2017-də mən tutulmuşam.
Even in 2017, when I was first arrested, but I was arrested under the libel and defamation article, but it was actually for what I was reporting for.
Və mən artıq başa düşürəm və görürəm bizi gələcəkdə Azərbaycanda fəaliyyət göstərən jurnalistləri hansı çətinliklər, hansı sınaqlar gözləyir və ilk növbədə ondan başlamaq istəyirəm ki, bu qanun qəbul olunubsa, bunu heç kim qeyri-ciddiliyə almamalıdır. Belə deyək də, bu qanunu biz düşünürəm ki, ciddi qəbul etməliyik. Mən izah eləyəcəm niyə.
But nobody should say that, should be thinking that, oh, okay, nothing changes. We know that situation with media was dire even before this new law came into effect. But there are really serious restrictions coming up, and I'd like to tell you what are these restrictions gonna be, are likely to be.
İlk baxışım odur ki, yəni Azərbaycanda çap mediası deməli sıradan çıxarılıb, televiziyalar sıradan çıxarılıb, radio sıradan çıxarılıb və yerdə qalan müstəqil media qurumları var idi, jurnalistlər var idi. Hansı ki, seçkilər vaxtı, etiraz aksiyaları vaxtı qismən də olsa sosial şəbəkələr vasitəsilə insanlara o xəbərləri, insanlara ölkədə baş verən hadisələri çatdırmağa cəhd eləyirlər.
So even though when it comes to covering protests, public protests, for instance, or some breaking news happening in the country, the journalists and when I say journalists, I mean also freelancers, stringers, reporters. They were trying their best to film it and to cover them. Now this is gonna change now.
Xüsusən
siz deyəndə ki bu dəyişəcək, yəni indi bu jurnalistlər də artıq gərək qeydiyyatdan keçsinlər, belə deyilmi?
Bəli.
Okay. So when I say so, I asked, what do you mean it's going to change? So you mean that those stringers, freelancers, reporters that were covering, with their cell phones, their cameras, now they will be required to get licensed, to get verified that they actually can do this job. Because qanunu qəbul ediblər ki, o hələ də belə can verən, sağ qalmış o müstəqil medianın müstəqil jurnalistləri aradan çıxartmaq üçün və onun üçün bu qanunu qəbul ediblər. Niyə? Çünki yenə deyirəm ki, seçkilər vaxtı biz görmüşük ki, dəfələrlə müstəqil jurnalistlər, onlayn televiziya jurnalistləri seçkilərdə saxtakarlıqları çəkirdilər, etiraz aksiyaları çəkirdilər, canlı yayımlar edirdilər və bunların bu Azərbaycanda son seçkilərdə biz gördüyümüz o biabırçı saxtakarlıqlardan sonra xüsusən onu da qeyd etmək istəyirəm ki, bu parlament seçkilərində onu xatırladım ki. So let me stop you there, Mehman. Let me translate what you just said. So basically, this is gonna change in a way that say now this is not only for today's events but also for future events. For instance, whenever there are public protests or whenever the elections fraud needs to be covered, as you know that previous elections, whether it's parliamentary elections or presidential elections, they were accompanied by a wide range of irregularities, fake ballots, and the reason the public knows about it because the journalists were there, they were filming it, they were spreading it, they were showing it in their social media accounts. Now that's going to change because those people who were doing this now will be in danger because now they have to be registered to do that job. So they have to get the state body's verification or license that they can do this job. There was no license whatsoever before in Azerbaijan. Anybody could work as a reporter, as a stringer. Nobody would question, or at least by law, nobody was supposed to question whether they actually can film. But nowadays, the law itself says that if you want to do that, you have to get registered by the state body. So the new body has been established, which will be responsible for registration of anyone who calls himself a journalist, a reporter, or foreign media or local media outlets. And there will be a lot of irregularities, a lot of problems there. So this will naturally affect how the elections and election fraud in future elections in Azerbaijan will be covered. What is it that public will know, the local public, the outside world? So I believe that one of the reasons why this new media law has been adopted is exactly this, to stop the future coverage of election frauds, future public protests, any protests against whether it is social or political, to put a hold on it so that journalists cannot do their jobs. This is the main purpose of this new media law. Mehman? I took a time to ben biraz əlavə etdim ki, biraz da genişləndirmək için çünki başa düşsünlər söhbətlərdən gelir. So I took a time to add a little bit myself to what Mehman was saying. Yes, Mehman.
İki xüsusi məqamı deməli vurğulamaq istəyirəm. Deməli bu parlament seçkilərində belə bir hadisə baş verib ki, mən bizim dairədən olan, yəni deputat, təyin olunan deputat Fərəc Quliyevin mənə rüşvət təklif eləsini gizlin səs yazısını yazmışdım və onu ictimailəşdirmişdim. Ondan sonra seçkilərdən sonra biz öz komandamızla araşdırmaçı jurnalistika ilə başladıq məşğul olmağa. Burada məmurların villasını, obyektlərini...
Gəlin bunu tərcümə eləyim də. So, neçənci ildən söhbət gedir? So, what year was that?
2020-ci ilin parlament seçkilərində.
So Mehman is saying that when he took part in the parliamentary elections in 2020, he filmed what when his rival in the elections, Fərəc Quliyev, offered him a bribe so that he takes back his candidacy. He filmed it, he made it public, and public knew what was going on and was able to provide support for Mehman. Now, will I be able to do the same in the future elections? Of course not. So siz deyirsiniz ki, yəni gələcəkdə məsəl üçün bunu ictimailəşdirmək mümkün olmayacaq.
Yeni qanunda belə bir bənd var ki, bundan sonra əgər hər hansı bir vəzifəli şəxsin gizlin səs yazısı, gizlin videosu və ya onun mülkləri onun icazəsi alınmadan çəkilibsə, bu fakt kimi qəbul olunmayacaq və bunu çəkən, səs yazısını gizlin yazıb ictimailəşdirən jurnalist cəzalandırılacaq. Yəni bu qanun artıq jurnalistlərə qarşı işlənilir.
I won't be able to do it again because in order to get audio or visual content, now you have to get a prior consent from the person that you will be filming of. So in this case, in order to film that this person was actually offering me bribe, a corruption, imagine I would have to get his consent. So this is just a rhetoric question, but who would, even if you ask for consent, who would actually agree to be filmed while offering a bribe? So this prohibits whether it is a journalist or any citizen of Azerbaijan to film incidents like that when they witness corruption, bribe, any fraud, any irregularity. So by law nowadays you have to get a prior consent, so which means I or other journalists or indeed any other journalist will not be able to get an evidence of this fraud being happening, and also in future instances to provide it, to offer it to court trials, etc. And by the election commissions will not be recognizing these complaints as legitimate because there is no evidence to back it.
Və bu əlbəttə ki, bütün jurnalistlərdə problem yaradacaq ki, təsəvvür edin, hansısa bir korrupsiyalaşmış məmur haqqında araşdırma eləmək istəyirsənsə, sən birinci ondan icazə almalısan ki, olarmı sənin haqqında araşdırma eləyim, paylaşım və onun icazəsi olandan sonra sən ona yaza bilərsən ki, mən tutam ki, ay filan kəs, filan nazir, sənin restoranını tapmışam, icazə verirsən, mən gedim orada bir kofe içim və onu çəkim. O icazədən sonra əgər icazə versən, mən onu çəkib yaysam, o fakt kimi qəbul olunacaq. Əgər ondan cavab gəlməsə və ya məni, belə deyək də, o hakimiyyət dövlət reyestrinə salınmasa, hakimiyyət belə deyək də, Lord desə, mən jurnalist kimi tanımasa, mənim ümumiyyət hüququm olmayacaq ki, həmin o dövlət məmura sorğu göndərim və s. Yəni, mən düşünürəm ki, elə problem hələ qeydiyyatda, söhbət o reyestrə düşməkdə, onu qoyuram bir kənara.
Mehman, let me just translate what you just said. So basically, when I'm doing a corruption investigation, there are always incidents, cases when you have to monitor some subject, monitor what is going on, to be able to film, to have an audiovisual evidence. So imagine, but nowadays, after this law is enacted, in order to even get, say, into a cafe, just to have a coffee, just to sit there and watch and monitor what is happening, even in this case, you have to have a prior consent. So the objects needs of your investigation need to be informed that you will be there, you will be monitoring, you will be filming, so on and so forth. So this clearly stops journalists from being able to conduct corruption investigations. And Mehman, thank you very much for sharing this, because I know that in the recently you're one of those journalists who are specifically targeting corruption investigations. We always in Osmanqizi TV cover your investigative stories, and I know that a very good portion of it you were able to film while behind the cameras. I know that Mehman, for instance, has been filming from the roof of the houses using drones, etc. And he's always been getting in trouble. I know that he would be taken to police for questions, but at least the law by legislative part of it was not as bad as it is now. So nowadays, Mehman, correct me if I'm wrong, so nowadays police has actually a legal pretext to stop you, because nowadays all he will be asking, show me proof that you're entitled to do this investigation, correct? So which means there will be no secrecy. You have to do it openly. You will not be able to monitor, you will not be able to film. So it really seriously targets and affects those people like Mehman Hussein, a journalist, blogger in Azerbaijan, who is trying with his limited resources to do his best to expose this corruption going on in the country. Düz dedim.
Bəli, və Sevin Şamyan, bu mövzunu orada bu qanun 3 ya 4 fəsildən ibarətdir və onun hər bir bəndini biz müzakirə eləsək, yəni o nəticəyə gələcəyik ki, hər bir bənd jurnalistlərə qarşı hesablanır. Burada yenə deyirəm ki, vətəndaş jurnalistikasından söhbət gedir, hansı ki etiraz aksiyalarda, canlı yayımlarla sosial şəbəkələrdə yayım edirdilər. Birincisi, polis onlara qanuni müdaxilə eləyəcək ki, görsət vəsiqən varmı, dövlət qeydiyyatından keçibsənmi? İkincisi, yəni söhbət prezident, parlament, bələdiyyə seçkilərində olan saxtakarlıqların o çəkilməsini qarşısına almaq, korrupsiya əməllərini araşdırıb ortaya çıxartmaq və bu siyahını yenə də davam etmək olar. Yenə deyəm ki, bu qanunda hər bir bənd jurnalistlərə qarşı işlənilir və biz bunun ağır fəsadlarını gələcəkdə görəcəyik.
So this law we will wait to see, but I'm sure that we will see how it badly, negatively affects already dire conditions. The journalists and bloggers are trying to do their job, so this is only a matter of time that we will see new regulations come, new regulations that envision new penalties and all other mechanism in order to stop, in other words, or punish those who are trying to cover events or are trying to expose corruption and other wrongdoings in the country. So this is, in fact, I know that one of our viewers called this law a law that protects corrupt officials. I don't know if you agree with that, Mehman. So this is not the law to protect media or indeed media freedom. It's a law to protect corrupt officials from media. Would you agree with this? İzləyicilərimizin biri dedi ki, bu qanun rüşvətxor məmurları jurnalistlərdən qorumaq qanunudur. Siz bu cür formulovka ilə razısınızmı?
Əlbəttə ki, bunun yenə deyirəm ki, bu jurnalistlərin işi çətinləşəcək və qanunda nəzərdə tutulmuş o korrupsiyaya qarşı mübarizə, islahatları və s. onlar qalacaq arxa planda və hər hansı bir jurnalist, hər hansı bir deputatın, nazirin, daha yüksək vəzifəli şəxsin korrupsiya əməllərini ortaya çıxardanda artıq ondan jurnalist də istər-istəməz qanuna uyğun olaraq sorğu-sual olunacaq ki, sən icazə almısanmı, icazə verilibmi, reyestrdə adın varmı və ən pis halda o olacaq ki, yəni bizim araşdırdığımız, ortaya çıxartdığımız məsələlər fakt kimi qəbul olunmayacaq. Yəni biri var qanuni şəkildə biz tələb edək ki, ortaya çıxartmışıq, prokurorluq bunu araşdırsın. Bundan sonra hər hansı bir araşdırma olacaqsa artıq biz prokurorluq araşdırsın deyə bilməyəcəyik. Çünki prokurorluq birinci ilk növbədə bizdən sorğulanacaq ki, birincisi sən görsət qanuna uyğun hərəkət, yəni qanuna uyğun olaraq bu araşdırmanı eləmirsən, yoxsa yox.
Yes.
Həmin
Let me translate
şəxsdən
what you just said, Mehman. Sizin mikrofonunuz ümumiyyətlə açıqdır mı Twitter'da siz danışanda? Okay, açıqdır. Let me just translate what you just said. That it really, indeed, Mehman said that I totally agree with this characterization of the law, that this law is there to protect corrupt officials from the media. And also it will make it harder for journalists to request that investigation is opened into those irregularities, because journalists themselves in this case have been engaged in illegal activity by filming corruption, by filming irregularities. So just imagine Mehman is there when one person gives a bribe to another one. So Mehman is filming. Which one of these three people do you think will be engaged in illegal activity? The one who gives bribe, the one who takes bribe? No, the one that is illegal there is the journalist, is the reporter who is actually filming it, and he will be questioned by the police. So this is how things are, and it will make it even more difficult for the public and for the journalists demand that the police and law enforcement bodies start investigation into those corruption and irregularity cases. So this is actually why we think that this law is going to open a way for more repressions because journalists and the bloggers now this time will become targets of these investigations. Çox sağ olun Mehman. Gəliz biz Elçin bəyə də söz verək və xahiş edək Elçin bəy həm medialoya münasibəti, həm də bizə Ali Aliyevin həbsi barədə məlumat versin. So thank you very much for Mehman. That was Mehman Hussein, a video blogger, investigative journalist from Azerbaijan. Thank you very much for your very enlightening story, because it really gives us an idea why this law has been adopted and what can be expected for journalists. But I also would like to give the floor to Elçin Rahimzadeh, the Boomerang Media, another blogger in Azerbaijan. How do you think it's going to affect you? And I'm also going to ask you to give us some information about the situation with Ali Aliyev, the prisoner of speech, the leader of a V party, and I know that today there was a appeal court trial of Ali Aliyev. The floor is yours, Elçin. Buyurun Elçin bəy.
Salam, hər vaxtınız xeyir olsun. Hər kəs salamlayıram.
Salamlar.
Mən media haqqında qanundan danışarkən bildirmək istəyirəm ki, onsuz da acınacaqlı bir durumdaydıq və indi bunu qanuniləşdirdilər, belə demək olarsa. Yəni mətbuata, pressingi, mətbuata hücumu artıq rəsmiləşdirdilər və əvvəllər biz deyirdiksə ki, qanuni deyil bunların hərəkəti. Artıq bunu qanuni şəkildə çaldılar və belə deyərdim, üstünlük öz tərəflərini keçdilər. Amma mən bütün dövrlər üçün bunu deyirəm. Heç vaxt azad sözü, heç vaxt haqqı durdurmaq olmur. Müxtəlif qanunlar çıxara bilərlər, müxtəlif maneələr yarada bilərlər. Amma gəlin açıq danışaq. Gəlin, bayaq Ali Aliyevin məhkəməsi önündə biz danışırdıq dostlarla. müstəqil şəxslər, müstəqil blogerlər olsun, müstəqil jurnalistlərin qarşısını almaq qeyri-mümkündür. Nəzərə alsaq ki, kifayət qədər sosial şəbəkələr var.
Thank you, Elçin. So Elçin Ramzadeh was saying that indeed it is, everybody knows how difficult is the situation with media in Azerbaijan already, with media journalists have been thrown to prison at different times. Many journalists were forced to leave the country, but also the new media is going to further affect the bloggers and the journalists. But earlier I was covering events, developments around Ali Aliyev's arrest. I was in front of the Court of Appeal. I had a discussion with the fellow bloggers and those who are covering this in their social media accounts, and the general mood is that no matter what the new restrictions come or new penalties, the media will be continuing to do their job. It's going to be even more difficult, but they're not going to be stopped. And also the social media is gonna develop no matter what the government of Azerbaijan does, and that means more public interest to what the people are posting in their social media accounts in Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, because this will remain the only probably window of freedom, because otherwise because registering to have your media outlet in Azerbaijan, to start the TV is out of question, to start the radio is out of question. The restrictions imposed by the Justice Ministry makes it harder and harder from year to year. So that means that online media, mən düz deyirəm, yəni ki, yeni media, online media daha da çox inkişaf eləyəcək. So that means that the online media will be developing there will be even more public interest, because indeed this will be the only sphere where people will be able, including journalists, will be able to express their views and to cover, to find out the news uncensored. I also, thank you, Elçin. I also would like to say a couple of words about the latest developments around Ali Aliyev's arrest. As you see, the title of the event, Prisoner of Speech, because Ali Aliyev was arrested over his interview with me that we did back in December last year. In this interview, I asked him, Ali Aliyev, as a politician and as a doctor, about his views about the crash of a helicopter, and he expressed his views that were different, a little different from the official version about this crash. By the way, the official investigation about this crash that took place on November 30th is not over yet, but nevertheless, the two members that claimed to be in that helicopter filed a lawsuit, a libel suit against Ali Aliyev. The eyewitnesses called this trial express trial because it took place in a matter of hours. The political opposition leader was thrown in jail. Himself and his defense, his lawyers, had no chance to defend him, and he was convicted on libel and defamation article accusation, and sentenced to 5 months of imprisonment. Now today there was Ali Aliyev's trial at the the Baku Court of Appeal. Unfortunately, again, the Court of Appeal today did not change his conviction. The trial has been postponed to Monday, February the 14th. We're gonna closely monitor this trial, but what we learned from the trial is that the person who has been convicted on libel and defamation, he's been kept with 4 other convicts, one of whom is actually a murderer. So basically, the word or the libel is is treated the same way as killing someone. So this politically motivated arrest, it actually shows the journalists and media experts have been calling for years to government of Azerbaijan to repeal the libel and defamation article from the criminal code. This did not happen. The government has been promising for years that they will be not at least using this article, but we see that it has been used, and it's been used against the critics of the government. Ali Aliyev is one of the most vocal critics of President Ilham Aliyev. He was his actual rival. He is former presidential hopeful. He ran for elections, for parliamentary elections, for elections for the parliament, and now Ilham Aliyev is strongly believed that has thrown his rival into jail because of his criticism. As I said, we're going to continue monitoring this trial, and I'm also would like to ask everybody else to keep this trial in their radars, because it's also a part of this crash or this crackdown on media freedom, on freedom of speech in Azerbaijan, when people are thrown into jail only because of what they say, what they think. Talking about national tragedy, including helicopter tragedy, is something that political leaders are expected to speak, to do, and throwing him in jail in such an express trial in a matter of hours. At 10 a.m. the trial starts, at 3 p.m. the person is already in prison in one day. It of course speaks volumes. So here I would like to conclude this session. I would like to thank my guests, Mehman Hüseyinov and Elçin Rahimzadeh, for bringing their take on the latest developments in Azerbaijan. Of course, as you can see, this is all a part of a larger crackdown on freedom of speech, freedom of media, and also on dissent. So we'd like everyone to think about it and to keep this in their radars. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mehman. Thank you, Elçin. I'm gonna conclude here.